Yeah. Hello, everybody. So, I've decided to continue reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, that's just a decision that has been made a long time ago because guess what? Douglas Adam is becoming my favorite author. Is becoming in the process of becoming, and I have yet to read all of his works because there's too many actually, and his work is just so freaking high volume. So like, look at this. It has 900 pages. Can you believe that? Can you believe that I'm gonna read a 900-page book? I don't think so. But well, when it comes to Douglas Adams, I don't think there's any doubt in that because it just pulls you into it. It just pulls you toward the end and you can't help but finish it. I mean, I didn't think that I would enjoy this book as much as I enjoyed it up until this point because, like, chapter three is very not chapter three, but chapter two and chapter one and chapter two has been such a funny time that I spent with this book. Like it's been filled with laughter and not just very normal laughter, you know. It's like a compulsive, impulsive laughter that you can't simply stop. You can't just like put a stop to it and try to avoid laughing at it. Okay, I'm feeling a bit dizzy. I don't know why, but sometimes it happens. Like, I feel this sense of vertigo, uh, which is so unappealing and irritating and annoying. But I'm gonna continue reading. Sometimes it happens when I'm reading, which is so stupid. Why would it be linked to reading, right? Okay, I'm getting so far off this. Let's get back to reading. On this particular Thursday, something was moving quietly through the ionosphere. I don't know, many miles above the surface of the planet. Several somethings, in fact, several dozen huge, yellow, chunky, slab like somethings, huge as office blocks, silent as birds. They soared with ease, basking in electromagnetic rays from the star soul, biding their time, grouping, preparing. The planet beneath them was almost perfectly oblivious of their presence, which was just how they wanted it for the moment. The huge yellow something went unnoticed at Goonhilly. What's Goonhilly? They passed over Cape Canaveral. Ugh, I hate pronouncing these names that I don't have any idea what they are. Why is the author torturing me like this? It wasn't like this in the previous two chapters. I don't know what's happening. Without the blip. Woomera. What's Woomera? And Jodrol. Okay, it's starting to annoy me. Look straight through them, which was a pity because it was exactly the sort of thing they'd been looking for all these years. The only place they registered at all was on a small black device called a sub-ether sense-o-matic. Oh, what is an o-matic? I don't know, which winked away quietly to itself. It nestled in the darkness inside a leather satchel, which Ford Prefect habitually wore slung around his neck. The contents of Ford Prefect's satchel were quite interesting, in fact, and would have made any Earth physicist's eyes pop out of his head, which is why he always concealed them by keeping a couple of dodge, what? Dodgyard? What is that? I'm gonna look it up, okay? Okay, we're gonna look it up. What? How is it pronounced? I don't know how to do read that transcript. But yeah, of an object made from paper, having the corners worn or battered with use. Oh, dog-eared. Oh my god. You just needed to have that hyphen, and I could have read it very easily. Why would you torture me like that, dog? It's not the fault of Douglas Adams. It's the fault of the the printer, or whatever, the publisher, I guess. Dog-eared. It's dog-eared, huh? Why? Why? Why is it called dog-eared when its corners are battered and kind of worn out? Why? Is the dog does dog has does a dog have ears like that? I don't know. Let's not go into the nitty gritty of this, and let's keep on reading. Scripts from for plays he pretended he was auditioning for stuffed in the top. I have no idea what all that meant. Besides the sub-etha sense-o-matic and the scripts, he had an electronic thumb, a short, squat black rod, smooth and matte with a couple of flat switches, and dials at one end. He also had a device that looked rather like a largish electronic calculator. This had about 100 tiny flat press buttons and a screen about 4 inches square on which any one of a million pages could be summoned at a moment's notice. It looks insanely complicated, and this was one of the reasons why the snug plastic cover it fitted into had the words "Don't Panic" printed on it in large, friendly letters. The other reason was that this device was, in fact, that most remarkable of all books ever to come out of the great publishing corporations of Ursa Minor, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The reason why it was published in the form of a micro sub what is that? Huh? What is that? A subatomic particle which is intermediate in mass between an electron and a proton and transmits the strong interaction that binds nucleons together in the atomic nucleus. Oh my god. This is what I love why I love Douglas Adams, because he's a scientist in the first place. He's just like such a scientist, and he talks about these physics like concept that I really want to learn about. So yeah, it's good. Oh, okay. I didn't actually quite get what it actually meant and what it was pointing out to, but well, at least I know what meson is. Kinda, not entirely. But yeah, I get the gist of it. Meson, it's like a particle, okay? It's like an subatomic particle. That's it. You don't need to complicate things. That's how you learn physics, by simplifying it in the first place. And then maybe later on you can go into the more sophisticated part of it. And that's how you make everything just so much easier, by allowing yourself to think from first principle. And I've been talking about this like quite often, and I love it. I just love learning physics concepts and any sciences. Like, I just love science, okay? Can I just care about science for no specific reason, but just like the pure care of it? I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's just read on. Meson. I don't even know if it's called meson, okay? Forgive my pronunciation. Excuse me for that. Electronic component is that if it were printed in normal book form, an interstellar hitchhiker would require several inconveniently large buildings to carry it around in. What? 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 What the frick that means? Like, what? The reason why it was, okay, I'm gonna read it from the start. And I wish there was like an option for me to underline it, but there's none. So I don't know. This program doesn't have any underlining stuff, but I'm gonna have to use my pencil, Apple Pencil, that is. Okay, this is not the color I wanted to use. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah. Nah. I think that. No. Okay, I need to get on with it. The reason why it was published in the form of a micro sub meson electronic component is that if it were printed in normal book, oh, I get it. I get it. Oh my God, it's just so intellectually stimulating. It's like solving a puzzle. That's how interesting it is. This book is just so interesting. I cannot recommend this more than I am already recommending it. Uh, actually, I could, I could, I could. What? Okay, I'm confusing myself, but yeah, like I cannot emphasize. I cannot. Okay, I'm getting super excited here, but yeah, just read it. Okay, don't make me go into the distance of go into that far distance of describing how incredible this book is, because it is actually quite glamorous intellectually. The reason why it was published in the form of a micro sub meson, oh my god, meson, or whatever, electronic component is that if it were printed in normal book form, an interstellar hitchhiker would require several inconveniently large buildings to carry it around in. That's interesting, so interesting. Beneath that, in Ford Prefect satchel, were a few ballpoints, a notepad, and a largish bath towel from Marks and Spencer. Why would there be a bath towel? You know, among other things, like out of all the things that a human being or a alien, whatever that person is, needs, there's like a towel. Well, why? You know, you just need a towel. I don't know. Okay. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has a few things to say on the subject of towels. Yeah. Okay. So now we're getting on to it. A towel, it says, is about the most massively useful thing. Okay, so it's talking about the usefulness of the towel. Let's see what it's about. An interstellar hitchhiker can have. Partly, it has a great practical value. You can wrap it around you for warmth. Oh, wow. That's not what I thought it would be used for. That's quite interesting. As you bound across the cold moons of Jaglan Beta. I don't think it can seal you from that cold, you know? It can't seal you from the cold of the moon. That's quite untrue. You can lie on it on the brilliant marble sanded beaches of. Oh, that's truth. That's truth. That's for sure. Okay, inhaling the heady sea vapors. You can sleep under it beneath the stars, which shine so redly on the desert world of Kakrafoon. Use it to sail a mini raft down the slow heavy river moth. Wet it for use in hand-to-hand combat. Wrap around your head to ward off noxious fumes or avoid the gaze of the ravenous bug bladder beast of Tral, a mind-bogglingly stupid animal. It assumes that if you can't see it, it can't see you. Daft as a brush, but very ravenous. Oh, really? Daft. Daft? Why do I not know what daft is? Okay. Okay, it means silly. Daft as a brush, but why would it say daft as a brush? Is a brush silly, like a brush full? How could you say a brush is a full object? It's just so annoying to me sometimes that something just doesn't make sense in Douglas Adams' book, and that's why it's funny. All right, but very, very ravenous. You can wave your towel in emergencies as a distress signal, and of course dry yourself off with it if it still seems to be clean enough. Ugh. Why do I not have the ability to say anything anymore? It's just so very like disturbing to me that I can't say clean in one go. Sometimes my mouth just doesn't work and I don't know what to do with it. More importantly, a towel has immense psychological value. For some reason, if a strag non-hitchhiker. Oh, you call a non-hitchhiker a strag? What? Why does do that? Discovers that a hitchhiker has his towel with him, he will automatically assume that he is also in possession of a toothbrush, washcloth, soap, tin of biscuits, flask, compass, map, ball of string, gnat spray, wet weather gear, spacesuit, etc., etc. Furthermore, the strag will then happily lend the hitchhiker any of these or a dozen other items that the hitchhiker might accidentally have lost. What this strag will think is that any man who can hitch the length and breadths of the galaxy, rough it, slum it, struggle against terrible odds, went through and still know where his towel is clearly a man to be reckoned with. Oh. Hence a phrase that has passed into hitchhiking slang, as in, hey, you sass, that hoopy Fort prefect. What? There's a food who really knows where the towel is. Says no, no, be aware of, meet, have, what? Hoopy, really, together guy, what? What does that even mean? I have no idea what that meant. Nestling quietly on top of the towel in Fort Prefect's satchel, the Sabetha sense-o-matic began to wink more quickly. What is that? Miles above the surface of the planet, the huge yellow somethings began to fan out. A guttural bank. Someone decided it was time for a nice, relaxing cup of tea. You got a towel with you? Said Ford suddenly to Arthur. Arthur, struggling through his third pint or pint. What is that? Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Whatever. Looked around at him. Why? What? No. Should I have? Should I have? Should I have? Okay. He had given up being surprised, where there didn't seem to be any point any longer. Yeah, there's no surprise with Ford. I mean, everything is a surprise. So, surprise doesn't mean anything anymore. Ford clicked his tongue in irritation. Drink up, he urged. At that moment, the dull sound of a rumbling crash from outside filtered through the low murmur of the pub, through the sound of the jukebox, through the sound of the man next to Ford hiccuping over the whiskey Ford had eventually bought him. Arthur choked on his beer, leaped to his feet. What's that? He yelped. Don't worry, said Ford. They haven't started yet. Thank God for that, said Arthur, and relaxed. It's probably just your house being knocked down, said Ford, drowning his last pint. What? Shouted Arthur. Suddenly Ford's spell was broken. Arthur looked wildly around him and ran to the window. My God, they are. They're knocking my house down. What the hell am I doing in the pub, Ford? It hardly makes any difference at this stage, said Ford. Let them have their fun. Fun? Yelped Arthur. Fun? He quickly checked out the window again that they were talking about the same thing. Damn their fun, he hooted and ran out of the pub, furiously waving a nearly empty beer glass. He made no friends at all in the pub that lunchtime. Stop, you vandals, you home wreckers, bawled Arthur. You have crazed vigeth. What? What's that? Visigoth? Yeah, I don't know what that means. Stop, will you? Ford would have to go after him. Turning quickly to the barman, he asked for 4 packets of peanuts. There you are, sir, said the barman, slapping the packets on the bar. 28 pence if you'd be so kind. Ford was very kind. He gave the barman another £5 note and told him to keep the change. The barman looked at it and then looked at Ford. He suddenly shivered. He experienced a momentary sensation that he didn't understand because no one on earth had ever experienced it before. In moments of great stress, every life form that exists gives out a tiny subliminal signal. This signal simply communicates an exact and almost pathetic sense of how far that being is from the place of his birth. On Earth, it is never possible to be farther than 16,000 miles from your birthplace, which is really isn't very far. So such signals are too minute to be noticed. Oh wow, this is like what? This is so interesting the way he's describing this whole thing. It's like on Earth, it is never possible to be farther than 16,000 miles from your birthplace. So like no matter how far I go, if you measure the distance between my position or my location to the location of my birthplace, it would never go beyond 16,000 miles. Is that really happening? Or am I just really? Or is it just like giving out this random number without any truth to it? I don't know. Let's read on. Fort Prefect was at this moment, under great stress, and he was born 600 light years away in the near vicinity of Betelgeuse. Oh, 600 light years away? Is that real? The barman reeled for a moment. Reeled? What's that? Staggered, be shaken by. Oh, he was shaken by it. He was staggering. Okay. Hit by a shocking, incomprehensible sense of distance, he didn't know what it meant. But he looked at Fort Prefect with a new sense of respect, almost awe. Are you serious, sir? He said in a small whisper, which had the effect of silencing the pup. You think the world's going to end? Yes, said Ford. But this afternoon. Ford had recovered himself. He was at his flippest. He was flippest. Flippest. What does it mean to be at his flippest? I don't know. There's so many words that I don't know in this book. Yes, he said gaily. In less than 2 minutes, I would estimate. The barman couldn't believe this conversation he was having, but he couldn't believe the sensation he had just had either. Isn't there anything we can do about it then? He said. No, nothing, said Ford, stuffing the peanuts into his pocket. Someone in the hushed bar suddenly laughed raucously at how stupid everyone had become. The man sitting next to Ford was a bit suzzled by now. Suzzled. Very drunk. Okay. His eyes weaved their way up to Ford. I thought, he said, that if the world was going to end, we were meant to lie down or put a paper bag over our head or something. What the frick? It's not as if earthquake is happening. It's the world ending. Like what would that help? What would that do for you if you were just to lie down or put a paper bag on your head? Why would that be even necessary? If you like, yes. Yeah, if it calms you down, if it helps you be composed, yeah, then yes, yeah. Set forward. That's what they told us in the army. It's not a war, okay? It's not a war, little man, said the man, and his eyes began the long trek back toward his whiskey. Oh, he was actually very drunk, so I wouldn't actually laugh at this because this is coming from the place of just like not stupidity but being completely unconscious in a way. Like when you're dreaming, you come up with stupid stuff, you kind of like have these random things in your head that doesn't actually make sense. So that's what's happening here. Will that help? Asked the barman. The barman is like, is he drunk as well? I think he's drunk as well. because there's like no way he can ask that question. No, said Ford, and gave him a friendly smile. Excuse me, he said. I've got to go. With a wave, he left. The pup was silent for a moment longer, and then, embarrassingly enough, the man with the raucous laugh did it again. The girl he had dragged along to the pup with him had grown to loathe him dearly over the last hour, and it would probably have been a great satisfaction to her to know that in a minute and a half or so, he would suddenly evaporate into a whiff of hydrogen, ozone, and carbon monoxide. However, when the moment came, she would be too busy evaporating herself to notice it. Oh, wow. The barman cleared his throat. He heard himself say, "Last orders, please." The huge yellow machines began to sink downward and move faster. Ford knew they were there. This wasn't the way he had wanted it. This wasn't the way he had wanted it. The huge yellow machines began to sink downward and to move faster. What's the huge yellow machines? I don't know. Ford knew they were there. This wasn't the way he had wanted it. Running up the lane, Arthur had nearly reached his house. He didn't notice how cold it had suddenly become. He didn't notice the wind. He didn't notice the sudden irrational squall of rain. Irrational squall of rain, a sudden violent gust of wind or localized storm, especially when bringing rain, snow, or sleet. Oh, okay. Squall. Why am I looking it up again? He didn't notice anything but the caterpillar. Okay, why am I why am I doing that? Bulldozer. I am quite like dreary with sleep. I guess that I can't even pronounce anything anymore. I'm just like dragging it always. What is happening? Crawling over the rubble that had been his home. You barbarians, he yelled. I'll sue the council for every penny it's got. I'll have you hung, drawn and quartered, and whipped and boiled until you've had enough. Ford was running after him very fast, very, very fast. And then I will do it again, yelled Arthur. And when I've finished, I will take all the little bits and I will jump on them. That's very childish, but okay. I love the childishness of this whole thing. Arthur didn't notice that the men were running from the bulldozers. He didn't notice that Mr. Proser was staring hectically into the sky. What Mr. Proser had noticed was that huge yellow somethings were screaming through the clouds, impossibly huge yellow somethings. And I will carry on jumping on them, yelled Arthur, still running until I get blisters or I can think of anything even more unpleasant to do. And then what? Arthur is becoming like completely insane at this point. Arthur tripped and fell headlong, rolled and landed flat on his back. At last he noticed that something was going on. His fingers shot upward. What the hell's that? He shrieked. Okay, that's even more terrifying than the house being knocked down. So yeah, we're getting on to something here. Whatever it was raced across the sky in its monstrous yellowness, tore the sky apart with mind-boggling noise and leaped off into the distance, leaving the gaping air to shut behind it with a bang that drove your ears 6 feet into your skull. That's beautiful. Such beautiful descriptions I'm finding in this book. This is beautiful. Another one followed and did exactly the same thing, only louder, only louder. It's difficult to say exactly what the people on the surface of the planet were doing now because they didn't really know what they were doing themselves. None of it made a lot of sense. Running into houses, running out of houses. Whoever was in the house was running out of the house, and whoever was actually outside of the house was running inward toward the house, and it was hectic. That's what it's describing. Howling noiselessly at the noise. Yeah, noiselessly because you can't even like come up with a noise to make because you're so terrified, and then Also, at the same time, it would be that, like, comparative to the noise that was actually coming from the sky, from that yellow thing, yellow something, it would be kind of like a noiseless shriek. So, like, whatever shouting is coming out of their mouth is not gonna even be heard, because the noise of the something that is happening from the sky in the sky is actually so loud that you cannot hear any other voices. So every other sound is kind of rendered noiseless. All around the world, city streets exploded with people, cars skidded into each other as the noise fell on them and then rolled off like a tidal wave over hills and valleys, deserts and oceans, seeming to flatten everything it hit. Oh, flattening everything with a voice, with a noise, I mean. That's just something. That's beautiful. Only one man stood and watched the sky, stood with terrible sadness in his eyes and rubber bungs in his ears. He knew exactly what was happening and had known ever since his sub-ether sense-o-matic had started winking in the dead of night beside his pillow and wakened him with a start. It was what he had waited for all these years. But when he had deciphered the signal pattern, sitting alone in a small dark room, a coldness had gripped him and squeezed his heart. Of all the races in all of the galaxy who could have come and said a big hello to planet Earth, he thought, didn't it just have to be the Vagons? Vegan? I don't know. Still, he knew what he had to do. As the Vagon craft screamed through the air high above him, he opened the satchel. He threw away a copy of Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. He threw away a copy of Godspell. He wouldn't need them where he was going. Everything was ready, everything was prepared. He knew where his towel was. A sudden silence hit the earth. If anything, it was worse than the noise. Oh, that's interesting. I love it. I love the like the beautiful way of describing things. It's just so like it hits a very like an interesting part of my brain that just keeps on being invigorated intellectually by these way of expressing or putting things in much more detailed way of describing. I don't know if it makes sense, but that's what I'm saying. For a while, nothing happened. The great ships hung noiseless, motionless in the sky over every nation on earth. Motionless, they hung huge, heavy, steady in the sky. A blasphemy against the nature. Against nature. Blasphemy? The act or offense of speaking sacrilegiously about God or sacred things. Profane talk. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. Blasphemy against nature. Many people went straight into shock as their minds tried to encompass what they were looking at. The ships hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks won't, but that bricks don't. And still nothing happened. Then there was a slight whisper, a sudden spacious whisper of open ambient sound. Every hi-fi set in the world, every radio, every television, every cassette recorder, every woofer, every tweeter, every mid-range driver in the world quietly turned itself on. Every tin can, every dustbin, every window, every car, every wine glass, every sheet of rusty metal became activated as an acoustically perfect sounding board. Before the earth passed away, it was going to be treated to the very ultimate in sound reproduction, the greatest public address system ever built. But there was no concert, no music, no fanfare, just a simple message. People of Earth, your attention, please, a voice said, and it was wonderful, perfect quadraphonic sound with distortion levels so as to make a brave man weep. Oh, oh, This is Prostatnik. Uh, that's a tormenting sentence. I can pronounce that sentence. It's very tormenting to me. Okay, I'm gonna pronounce it anyway. Prostitnik Vogan Jelts of the Galactic Hyperspace Planning Council. The voice continued, as you will no doubt be aware. The plans for development of the outlying regions of the galaxy require the building of a hyperspatial express route through your star system. And regrettably, your planet is one of those scheduled for demolition. Demolition. Which way is correct? I don't know. The process will take slightly less than 2 of your Earth minutes. Thank you. What? The PA died away. PA? Who's PA? Uncomprehending terror settled on the watching people of Earth. The term moved slowly through the gathered crowd as if they were iron fillings on a sheet of board and a magnet was moving beneath them. Panic sprouted again. That's a very interesting, very scientific, very beautiful way of saying the wave of anxiousness over people, how it's been moving. Okay, that's just so interesting. How's that even like here? I cannot. Like this book, I can't recommend this book enough, okay? Panic sprouted again. Desperate, fleeing panic. But there was nowhere to flee to. Yeah. Observing this, the Vagons turned on their PA again. It said, there's no point in acting all surprised about it. All the planning charts and demolition orders have been on display in your local planning department in Alpha Centauri for 50 of your Earth years. So you've had plenty of time to lodge any formal complaint, and it's far too late to start making a fuss about it now. Okay, it's the same thing that the man who was about to knock down the house of the Arthur was saying. So I don't know what's happening here. The PA fell silent again and its echo drifted across the land. The huge ships turned slowly in the sky with easy power. On the underside of each, a hatchway opened, an empty black square. By this time, somebody somewhere must have manned a radio transmitter, located a wavelength, and broadcast a message back to the Vagan ships to plead on behalf of the planet. Nobody ever heard that. They said what they said. They only heard the reply. The PA slammed back into life again. The voice was slammed back into life. That's a good description. I love it. The voice was annoyed. It said, "What do you mean? You've never been to Alpha Centauri? For heaven's sake, mankind! It's only 4 light years away." Okay. You know, I'm sorry, but if you can't be bothered to take an interest in local affairs, that's your own lookout. Oh my God, the local affairs. Okay, so it's just so stupid. It's just so beautiful and stupid at the same time. Energize the demolition beams. Oh, wow. Light poured out of the hatchways. I don't know, said the voice on PA. A pathetic, bloody planet. I've no sympathy at all. It cut off. There was a terrible, ghastly silence. There was a terrible, ghastly noise. There was a terrible, ghastly silence. The wagon constructor fleet coasted away into the inky, starry void. Okay, chapter 4. I'm gonna leave it here, but it was amazing. I'll see you in the next chapter, and I hope that you actually read this book. Thank you for watching. Or watching or listening, whatever you've been doing, or just doing nothing because you didn't listen to me. And I know that doesn't actually make sense. So yeah, I'm just gonna cut you off here.